Hi, kids. We read our Bible story last night. We were reading all of the plagues that God put on Egypt for not freeing the slaves. And so now we're traveling on from where the slaves have been freed, and they're traveling on to the land that God had promised them. And the title of tonight's story is called The Sea Opens Up. And the Bible verse that comes with the story is Exodus, which is the second book of the Bible, right after Genesis, and you will look for chapter 14, verse 21, and it says, "And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided." See, they have to pass through the sea in order to get to the land, across the land, because there's a big, ocean there, and God parted the waters, made some of the water go to the left and some go to the right, so in the middle, it was dry ground, and they were able to walk through there to get over to the other side, but their enemies didn't. Let's get into the story and you'll see. At last, the Israelites were on their way from Egypt to the land of Canaan, the land God had promised them long ago. During the 400 years that the family of Jacob and his 12 sons had spent in Egypt, each father had told his children of the blessings that God had given his special people through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Each child wondered if he would be one of those to see the green grazing lands where Abraham had first heard the promises. Now that time had finally come. Instead of following the shortest road to Canaan, the Lord told Moses to lead the people toward the Red Sea and the wilderness around it. He did this so that they would not pass through the land where the warlike Philistines lived. Moses knew this country near the Red Sea, for it was here that he had watched over Jethro's flocks, which is, flocks of sheep, his father-in-law's. At the head of the long parade of Israelites, Moses marched, with the Lord leading the way in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. When Pharaoh realized that the Israelites had gone, he was sorry that he had no more slaves to do his hard work. News reached him, and they made their way into the wilderness and were hemmed in by the mountains and the Red Sea, and he decided to follow and recapture them. See, Pharaoh's wanting to go back on his word again. Calling his captains, he commanded them to prepare war chariots for battle, which is like horses and buggies back in that day. They were called war chariots. They used them to fight wars. It was just a little thing that they stood in, like a little cart, and the horses pulled them. They could go really fast. In their swift chariots and on trained horses, the army of Pharaoh soon caught up with the Israelites who had been walking. When the Israelites looked up and saw the dust stirred up by Pharaoh's army in the distance, they grew very frightened. "Are we any better off now than we were in Egypt?" they cried to Moses. "It would have been better to stay there as slaves than to come into the wilderness only to be killed." But Moses remembered the words that the Lord had done in Egypt, and he knew that some way the Lord would help them out now. "Do not be afraid," he told the people. "The Lord is going to fight for you." Then as the night fell, the pillar of cloud that had been guiding the Israelites moved between them and the Egyptians, so that the Egyptian army could not see ahead. They pitched camp for the night, planning to attack the Israelites in the morning. But in the Israelite camp, no one settled down to rest. By Moses' order, they prepared once again to march. Right up to the bank of the Red Sea they went. Then a marvelous thing happened. Moses held his rod above the waters of the sea, and a strong wind began to blow. It blew so hard that the water parted right down the center, making a path of dry ground, walled in on either side by great banks of water. With Moses leading the way, the Israelites walked straight across the Red Sea. When the Egyptians saw the Israelites marching into the sea, they quickly jumped onto their horses and into their chariots and followed. But as they entered the path through the sea, the Lord looked down from the pillar of cloud and made it difficult for the Egyptians to make their chariots go. Wheels began to fly off, and as they looked at the mighty walls of water surrounding them, they became afraid. "Let us forget the Israelites," they cried. "Their God is too powerful and too strong for us to fight." By this time, the last of the Israelites had reached the shores on the other side of the Red Sea and were watching the Egyptian army coming after them. Once more, at God's command, Moses stretched forth his rod over the sea. The walls of waters trembled, leaned, and then with a mighty roar, they collapsed, swallowing up the Egyptian army with one crushing blow. As the Israelites watched the bodies of the soldiers rising in the waves, they bowed their heads in silence at the great power of their God. Then Moses began to sing, and all the voices joined in with the words, "I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed. The horse and his rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song, and he has saved me." And that's where we stop today. So you see the Egyptians all drowned in the Red Sea because they were chasing after the Egyptians, trying to get them back, and God wasn't going to have that. So he put the water back down after the Israelites had crossed over safely, and all the Egyptians drowned, so they did not get to capture and re-enslave the Egyptian or the Israelites. You guys want to answer some questions tonight? I'll give you a couple. What did Pharaoh do when he realized his slaves were gone? He called his army and got them together to get their chariots and horses ready so they could go back to attack the Israelites and enslave them once again. How did the Israelites get across the Red Sea? God told Moses to stretch out his staff that he gave him over the water, and the waters parted on both sides and made dry land through the middle so they could walk across safely to the other side. And what happened to Pharaoh's soldiers when they tried the same thing? God made the waters come back down over top of them, and they all drowned. So that was tonight's story, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Our next story will be Food from Heaven. It's talking about the Israelites on their journey to their new home, Canaan, which takes them a while to get to because they end up disobeying the Lord many, many times, and they end up wandering in the wilderness, living in the wilderness without going to their land for 40 years because of the disobedience they had for God. Always turning to other false gods and making idols like of a cow, a golden calf, and forgetting about God, even though He'd done so much for them. So He made them stay in the wilderness for 40 years, till that generation had died, and a new generation had come, and then they would get to go to the land of Canaan. But you guys will see that in some later stories. So I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's story. The sea opens up, and I hope you guys have a great weekend. Let's bring those souls to Jesus, and I hope to see you guys again soon with another Bible story. Bye, guys. God bless.